Hey there, Hellraisers. I'm Pruitt, and this is Jim Davis. And today we are at D&D Live 2019 here in beautiful LA. We're talking about the Descent into Avernus because this is an important book. It's asking the important questions, Jim. Like, why did the Abyssal Chicken cross the River Styx? He can't fucking remember. I don't know. So let's get to it here on WebDM.
Are you all right? I mean,
I was waiting for the drums.
there's no drums. It's D&D Live. You just said it.
Right. No, you're right. My bad.
Your brain is addled by all your time in
It's
Hollywood.
addled.
Clearly.
Clearly. It's in the stars, I admit. But Jim, this has been absolutely nuts.
Right? Yeah, for real.
I've been to conventions, a lot of conventions recently, and there's a whole atmosphere to them. But I've heard it said a lot here that this is like D&D summer camp.
Yes, a lot more so than a convention is. Like, a convention is this sort of fantasy world that you live in, a temporal bubble on a demi-plane somewhere or something that you go to and you experience this sort of atmosphere of gaming on a massive scale, probably more than you've seen, but it's also familiar.
Right.
Everyone there is sort of like, their con gear and everything, whereas this is like trying to create an immersive atmosphere, because so you can like go up to people and get quests and have to decipher infernal script and go around and talk to people. We were in cosplay yesterday and people kept coming up to us. It was like, no, we're just gray name NPCs, people. We got no quest lore for you.
Yeah, there's no quest no quest bubble above our heads. Right. We are not dispensing. But yes, apparently at one point they were looking for somebody dirty and red, and we were pre-Seville Mater, as you
Covered in
probably
blood and dirt.
Covered in blood and dirt. So sorry for the confusion.
Any confusion.
I was a little sad that I really wanted to do that quest, though. It looked really fun.
It looked really fun. I bet
you get like a soul coin at the end of it.
Oh yeah.
So you can power your own Infernal War Machine.
Well, that's
we'll
how
get
else
back.
we're gonna get it.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that later in the show. So
What are some highlights for you so far?
I mean,
other than just the whole thing.
The whole thing, yeah. I think just like the smallness of it is what I like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm a kind of person where a big convention gets way overwhelming.
Yeah.
and I'll start to be like, you know what? I just need to go back to my hotel, whatever. I'll see you guys later. But like, this is a much smaller venue. It's a much smaller number of crowds. The number of people playing are sort of smaller scale. And so to me, it's like an easier space to navigate and like take in all of the really cool things. The fact that it's here in Hollywood, the fact that there's like an attempt to make it feel like a place that's in a fantasy world.
Yeah.
Right. This isn't just a convention vendor hall. This is the wandering market.
Yeah.
Right. Where the various wonders and amazing things that you can find to play your Dungeons & Dragons games or enhance them or whatever can be found. And so like in that sense, it's the attempt to like blur that line between convention and like Renfest and summer camp and all of those things that make this like just a big D&D party. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I didn't answer your question or anything like that.
No, it's fine. We rarely do.
I think the immersiveness of it is one of the things that's impressive. Just the attempt to be immersive and to create an experience that's different from a convention, but share some of those qualities with it.
Yeah. Last night, got up here and watched like the last two games.
Yeah.
And oh my God, I had such a great time with that because I haven't really done a lot of like, I watch games online.
Sure.
Like actually sitting there in it, because I always imagine it's like, well, I'd probably get a little restless or whatever. It's like, no. It's like, at least for those games, since they were like about 2-hour games, it's like going to watch a play.
Yeah.
And everybody's, they're on it and it's funny. Deborah and Wall's like, Twiggy. I'm Twiggy for life. Twiggy for president. The jokes are great. That's what you're here for, though.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Actually seeing the pieces of this adventure played out, so you can kind of get a taste of what this is.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm just gonna say it, man.
What are you gonna say?
Spelljammer it's on its way.
So you've been predicting Spelljammer for a while. This is your definitive.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
Moment. You heard it here, folks. This is where Pruitt's planting his flag. Mm-hmm. So do you think it's the next book then?
Maybe. Yeah.
All right.
I think it's,
we're not even going to talk about the one that's coming out in September. We'll talk about the next one.
Yeah, we're going to talk about
coming out after that.
Yeah. We've already been scooped here, right? We're on Sunday. People have been talking about this for this whole time.
Right. Old news.
It's old
Come
news
on.
already.
You might as well have already played the adventure.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I already know how it ends. You know how it ends? you can get in a Spelljammer and fly out of hell.
That's
how,
one way to live.
spoiler
That's
alert.
one way to live.
And so that's what I'm saying. That's your next thing. Because
Sure.
we were talking about this with the Marvel movies. It's about staging,
Yes.
right? These new adventures are for new players and getting them used to the world that they're playing in, which is the
Absolutely.
Forgotten Realms.
Yeah.
And each one adds a little bit of an element. You added the Abyss,
Yep.
you added the Underdark at
Yeah.
the same time.
Sure.
Now we're going into Hell.
Yeah.
And at the end, there's a bit of a Spelljammer action there.
You think they're working up?
And
they're
it's just,
ramping up.
yeah, they're just ramping up.
It's a
See,
slow boil.
you have to go down to Hell. It's the whole, one step back to take 2 steps forward.
Oh,
kind
sure.
of thing.
Yeah. I can see that.
I mean, I'm just digging here, but
I mean,
Yeah.
listen. There's all different ways. There's abyssal ships. There's all kinds of things, and of course, the adventure has infernal machines and the like, of which you might be able to find some somewhere in the back. But certainly, we had an experience. I think my second highlight is the asking for forgiveness, not permission, for the Infernal War Machines.
Yeah.
We may or may not have climbed up on them when we weren't supposed to. That's our bad. That's our bad.
Well,
but
in our
I don't
defense-
regret it.
No, there is no regret whatsoever. We're in Hell. But my thing, there was not a do not touch sign.
Listen.
Now, maybe it was because they hadn't been put up yet,
That's
because it
very
was like the
lawful evil of
preview
you,
night.
for one.
Well, hey, we're in Hell. Sorry, I'm going to be a rules lawyer about this shit. But there was not a do not touch. So we touched.
So we touched, yes.
And it was awesome.
And it's really awesome, and I like to blur those lines between fantasy and sci-fi and post-apocalypse, and I think they're best. I think D&D is best played in a big conceptual pool, where all kinds of things get thrown into the mix. And like you're talking about, this slow ramp up, as we talk about, get into talking about the adventure here in a minute. Like, it's that thing. We start off with something like the Lost Mines of Phandelver, and it's goblins and old dwarven mines and things like that, and then we move into very traditional. First couple of adventures are more traditional. Then we get like a bit of an Underdark. Now we're going to do a bit of Gothic horror. Now we're adventuring in Chult and doing some sort of like tropical fantasy adventure there. And like each one adds a little bit more to the world. It adds a bit more to the conceptual space of what Dungeons and Dragons is. And now we're taking that step across the planar boundaries, more so than say Curse of Strahd was. I mean, like, we're going to adventure in a completely different place. The rules of the game are going to work slightly differently here.
Yeah.
They've hinted at that with, say, rests and death saves and things like that. You're in a different place, a different location. It's time to, like, highlight what makes that unique and why you would want to be there.
Yeah.
And I think, personally, for me, like, with the little bit that I've seen from Ghosts of Saltmarsh, like, we get the preview copy there in our amazing swag bag, right? And even flipping through like that, and the second half of that book and all of the tools that are in Ghosts of Saltmarsh makes me really encouraged to be like, listen, I think Sent into Avernus is going to have similar tools, because they're saying like you can play in these parts of the levels of hell that you would visit for as long as you want. So clearly there's got to be something there to like procedurally generate things. So like just seeing where the design team is going with D&D products, seeing where the other things that are come out, whether it's the Essentials kit or the adventure fiction for even younger fans who are looking to maybe not start a game of D&D yet, but want to be part of that world. They want to start reading lore and getting in an on-ramp.
Yeah.
All of these things speak to me of like a D&D that has the long-term growth of the hobby in mind, the long-term health of their particular game in the hobby in mind, to bring in new people, teach them how to play, and then like provide even new DMs with these books, these series of books that will help them grow their campaign, get their players used to being in this world. Like, that's a big highlight of this for me, because it's like, it makes me feel like D&D is still in good hands. They've hired all these new people. There's all these new names on board, many of which we know and sort of have professional relationships with now. And it's like, oh, this is going to be great. Like the future is still, bright for role playing. And that is something that I've really taken away from this experience. Anything on that?
Yeah, I agree. Because when it comes to beginnings, this begins in Baldur's Gate. And for me, that was probably the Baldur's Gate games were probably my earliest introduction to anything related to D&D.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I,
Definitely.
I remember back in the day, like, oh, play these,
Yeah.
and then look at these books. And I was like, oh, this is kind of fun.
Yeah, yeah. So for me, it's like there were the Baldur's, or not the Baldur's Gate, but the D&D arcade games, right?
Oh, yeah.
Tower of Doom. Those are set in Mistar, I believe. And then there was the cartoon and other things. So it was like on my radar. I knew that Dungeons and Dragons was a thing, but it really wasn't until Baldur's Gate came out, and I had friends. Of course, this was when we were both, the two of us were now first started working at our first job together, and only months away from our very first pen and paper D&D game.
Yeah.
Oh, this wonderful story of how we with a cute meet cute story.
Yeah.
This is so Baldur's Gate is central to this, and because it was a game experience that distilled, in this case, second edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, into an easy to learn experience. Like I had tried the system before, and say the way spell slots worked, the way armor class worked was just an arcane, like how.
Tahako? No,
Right,
it's
right.
Thaco, Pruitt. It
seeing-
means to hit AC 0.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
So this game, and I know for others it was like the Gold Box games that preceded Baldur's Gate, but for me it was Baldur's Gate. Like you're saying, it's like this world of Dungeons and Dragons. It put together the pieces of looking at the monster manual at the bus stop when I was in elementary school from older kids. It put together the pieces of all of these things that I had seen. It was like, this is how the world works. This is how classes work. This is how the system works. This is what an adventure looks like. And like after playing Baldur's Gate, I was like, I'll just, run a game now. And so it's like this moment where the tabletop game had influenced the video game, which is influencing the tabletop game, which is influencing the players. And of course, this is old news now, but way back in the crusty old days, then it wasn't so much.
Yes, of the before time.
Yeah.
Before the fall.
So how many times do you think you've played through Baldur's Gate then? Baldur's Gate or Baldur's Gate 2? These poor souls in this
poor
wandering
souls
market,
being
just
murdered behind
tortured
us.
and murdered in hell.
Why did we ever agree to come here?
I don't know.
I would say I've probably beaten the first one at least 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
I know that we've, with our producer, done a few, haven't beaten it, but the enhanced editions that Beamdog did.
Oh, yeah.
We've played through quite a bit of the first one.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that Descent into Avernus begins here, though.
Yes. Yeah.
And you're going to get the rules for Baldur's Gate and kind of look inside that city.
Absolutely.
What is your favorite little bit of lore about Baldur's Gate?
So for me, like what I enjoy about the city, they've described it as like Gotham City, the Sword Coast's Gotham City, to Waterdeep's Metropolis, right? And I do like the fact that it's one of those places where the underlying power structures of these fantasy cities are exposed. And Baldur's Gate's the place where if you've got the money, you got the clout, you've got the adventuring backup for it, then you live in the good part of the city. They literally built 2 cities that share sort of this wall. It's very medieval in that respect.
It's very modern too.
For one, right? They're both. There's a lot of similarities there, but it's this one where the guilds control things. It's trade. That describes a great many cities on the Sword Coast. But unlike, say, the more egalitarian Waterdeep, where the lords of the city go about masked, you don't necessarily know who they are. There's all these sort of structures in place to make this a well-functioning sort of city that you could adventure in. Baldur's Gate really feels like a place that's just like all of the niceties have been thrown off. All of the courtesies have been thrown off. And if it is a place that's like Gotham City, then it's one of those places where the corruption starts at the top and the bottom and just permeates the city.
Eats the city until it gets to the middle, the gooey middle.
Basically. So it's the city itself is controlled by 4 dukes, who, as far as I can tell, claim that title by right of conquest and military might alone. They have no sort of noble lineage or things like that. That describes a lot of places on the Sword Coast. They adopt the title of nobility, but are really more like warlords and the like. So in that sense, you might find that your characters are already used to a kind of brutal power politics from the city that when they visit Avernus is going to just look quite similar, if not just more ruthless.
Yeah, there's just less city down there.
Right. Well, certainly on Avernus, you got to get to the second layer for that one. But so I like that it's sort of like nakedly, the power structures of the city are nakedly exposed. if you're going to stay in Baldur's Gate, that gives the players an obvious sort of antagonist to fight against, to try to overthrow or something like that. I love a good like low level tier 1 urban campaign.
Yeah.
And for me, Waterdeep wasn't working for me, in a way that I liked. It's like, so I'm sitting over here going like, oh, I'll take bits and pieces from Waterdeep, use them in other places. Whereas when I read Baldur's Gate, I go like, well, I just would use this whole cloth. Like, I just love everything about this place. I love the fact that in the 1490s, where we are in the current Dale Reckoning, it's got like a settlement of Kalashites and other people from Kalashan that have sort of like settled there, that it's a medieval city and that there's the city proper, but also these suburban outgrowths that kind of spread throughout the city, so that you can see all the different ways that these urban environments grow and offer a unique palette for which to set your campaigns. And like, I don't know, I'm probably it's because of the video game. I am way more excited about playing Baldur's Gate than I am Waterdeep.
I just want to walk into a tavern because I can close my eyes and I know what it sounds like in that tavern.
Oh, sure. Yeah, exactly. You certainly can. And there's all kinds of fun stuff. There's the Hall of Wonders, where all this sort of like inventions of Gond and things like that are. There's the Flaming Fist mercenary company that sort of like keeps peace throughout the city. And if you're reading something like Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, reading between the lines, occasionally just like run riot through the poorer sections of the city and slum as a way of like intimidating and oppressing people. And so it's like it's a place that's rough around the edges and not nice, not pleasant to be in.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I like it. I like morally gray areas, as you know.
Yeah. Again, it's somewhat modern, mirrors modern times.
Sure. Yeah. Why not? It's the kind of world I like to play in. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. So. From Baldur's Gate, the heroes are probably going to find themselves some reason, way, shape, or form heading down into hell.
Yeah.
So before we get into Avernus proper,
right,
let's talk for a minute about the actual like infernal legacy of hell in D&D.
Right.
Because this is a touchy subject back in the day.
Yeah,
The whole satanic panic thing.
Yeah,
so.
And I've already seen some reactions to the new storyline as sort of like, I'm not sure about this, right? Like, this is touching on stuff that for older fans of the hobby, for people who've been playing for a long time, certainly since the 80s, but even for us, where we started in the 90s, and that the legacy of that satanic panic of like, no, there's devils in D&D, and there are the souls of the people who are playing are at risk. And all of this kind of like misplaced fear and paranoia that got put on the game really had a long impact.
Yeah.
Right. So like in the early parts of the game, the basically they're taking like Christian mythology and taking it out of its real world context and plopping it into the game and going, this is hell. These are devils. We're using the names that you would find for the Mephistopheles and Beelzebub. But you're also playing clerics who, at least in the early version of the game, are also explicitly like Christian. They've got crosses. The things that they can do are both a combination of like the Van Helsing vampire hunter type, but also several medieval myths and stories about various fighting clergy and warrior monks and such.
Our patron Ilmater.
Certainly
is very Jesus influenced.
Sure, certainly, right. And the Templars are also a good template for, say, the D&D cleric, right?
Yeah.
The D&D cleric is not a priest in the I have a flock that I minister to sense. The D&D cleric is I put on my armor and I get my weapon and I go fight evil.
Right.
Like they are a warrior militant priest. And so there's all these influences there. And in the early parts of the hobby, or the early decades of the hobby, there's this fear that comes out of it, because if you have parents who don't know any better, and this is one thing where we're living in the second decade of the 21st century with nerd culture and geek shit all over the place, that you can kind of like take for granted that, granted, not The Rock.
No, it's not granite, no.
You kind of take for granted that like, I can have these things lying about, and someone's not going to look at it and go, what kind of crazy person looks at this, Whereas those of us who grew up and were part of this hobby earlier, it was like, you can't just have your role-playing game books out because people are going to look at it. There's magic sigils and all sorts of weird stuff going on. There's monsters and if you're not familiar with all of that and all you know is sort of tabloid scare and fear mongering, you might go like, what's this weird book of devil magic my son brought?
Yeah, well, or you have your mom praying over you while you sleep.
Certainly, right, yeah. It
But
creates,
that's fine.
Yeah, it creates a
Yeah, went through that a little bit. Hey, but like you said, it is the second decade of the 21st century, and I can talk about D&D around my mom now.
Oh my goodness.
I just turned 40.
There you go. Progress.
So one day at a time. It marches on. But
Yeah.
what I do love, though, is the idea of what comes out of D&D, the influences here that went into it and comes out of it like I mean, you're talking like metal music, heavy metal like the magazine, the cartoon, the animated, whatever.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, there's so many things that are kind of all wrapped up in that early, that 70s and 80s kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And I do love that it's just kind of the new version of that.
Yes.
Like via Mad Max.
Certainly,
Right?
yeah. The Mad Max meets Dante's Inferno is an aesthetic that I love. If you're a fan of the kind of work that we do either on our WebBM Plays show or our Twitch channels, you know that like Mad Max is a huge influence on The Land Between Two Rivers, post-apocalyptic D&D. And I like that I think it's a good in, right? Like Mad Max Fury Road is sort of one of those movies where it's like, I don't know many people who don't love it, or at least, are inspired by it. And it's a fun idea to play with, right? And so Hell is a perfect place for that because Hell is it's a hellscape, right? And the Mad Max movies they're in a hellscape.
Yeah.
So it makes perfect sense to kind of combine those two. And as a way to sort of like adventure in an infernal realm, to feature devils and all other kinds of things, and all that stuff. It's a way to say like, all right, this is a place where evil reigns supreme.
Yeah.
It's supernaturally harmful to you on both a physical and spiritual level.
Yeah.
It's going to. You're going to get distracted. You're going to need some blinders.
I'm fine. I'm good.
And there's this like rich potential there for a lot of games that you can have or stories that you want to tell out without having to like completely trash your campaign setting, which I think you should do, and I love doing myself, but it's not for everybody, be honest.
You put a lot of work into it. It is fun.
What's fun about trashing it is seeing all that work get
It's
destroyed.
like Lego, right?
Yes.
You build it all, you marvel at it,
Yes.
and then you're Godzilla.
And then you're Godzilla and
Yeah.
you come crashing down. So, not everybody wants to like turn their campaign setting into a wasteland. Hey, guess what? Here's one already prepared for you that you can get to, that's difficult to escape, that's offers a place for adventure. And like I've sent characters to Hell as low as say 3rd or 4th level, and it's survivable. It's doable. There's adventure to be had there. It's not a place that you should think of as like an end game sort of place. It's there from the beginning. You just need to provide them the means to get there until they can plane shift. That's usually how why you don't go there.
Yeah, it's more of an Iron Man 1.
Certainly,
So,
sure.
yeah, no, I get it. I get it.
But like, I just want to stick on the point about like just the hellish influences, right? You're talking about heavy metal and all those other things. I think it's a place. Now is a good time to sort of reinvent these places for D&D. And as much as I love the core ideas of D&D, I love the legacy and lore of it. I do think that it is important to add something new with each edition, and I think one of the braver things that 4th edition did, speaking just sort of like in retrospective, was try to create a new cosmos for Dungeons and Dragons. And I think like 5th edition returning to more of the Great Wheel cosmology and everything is a nod towards its classical sort of, as it grew out of original and then 1st edition. But that doesn't mean there's not a space for us to reconceptualize what these places mean. And I think like turning Hell from the blasted, fiery wasteland, or certainly Avernus, the first layer there, is a great. It's a great opportunity for adventure and everything. It's a great opportunity to do something new, but still like use familiar elements. And like that's like I'm ready to see what new comes out of it and how they were going to add to D&D lore and D&D legacy with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the great things about Hell is it is supposed to be like infinite, even though it is finite.
Right.
But it's a big place. I mean, Forgotten Realms is just a spot on Toril, right? And so there's a lot of places to explore, and we do spend a lot of time in that one little speck. So.
Yeah, and it's it's a thing. First off, like conceptualizing the outer planes is one of these things that is worth it for a dungeon master to think about, and even the players to kind of consider for a minute, because you think of it, it's like there's these inner planes, and they represent the primal elements that create the material plane, right?
Right,
So
right.
it's inner, and then the outgrowth to the prime material, and then the prime material gives way to the outer, which you usually have to pass through the astral plane for, and the astral plane is one of which it's like everything is mental. You are a being of pure sort of like spiritual construct. None of your physical stats matter. So in some ways, these outer planes are purely metaphysical places.
Yeah.
Like you don't necessarily physically go to them. You sort of change your state of consciousness to get there. And that's sort of one way to think about it. And then the other way is sort of like I walk through a portal as I would walk through a door, and then my physical body is in this place that is otherwise a conceptual realm. So there's already powerful magic at work here that's allowing your character with this physical anchored existence to the prime material to even visit and travel to these places. The potential for like how you get there, what it is that you're going to do, how does just the traveling there change you? You know, are you going to use the more traditional routes of say like a portal or something like that, where you have a specific key that opens a door to something there, or maybe use a gate spell or plane shift? Or maybe it's something like in order to get to hell and adventure there, you've got to do something terrible. You know, you've got to find a cruel creature that's willing to take you there, or you need to like go, it's like that one.
Yeah.
Or you need to
You
go,
heard his call.
right? Or you need to like pay the ferryman to take you down the river Styx. To safely and not drown you or drop you off where you're not supposed to be.
Yeah.
And so it's like I'm rambling at this point, but it's a place where there's adventure to be had. It's infinite, but you shouldn't let that feel like you've got to define all of that infinity. You would treat Avernus or any other part of hell as just anything else. Find a place where you want to just stake out your beginning, pick some adventure locations, what factions are at work, some of the NPCs, and like start from there. It's like any other place, right?
Yeah.
And I think thinking about it as like this infinite other world is like awesome and cool, but can also be intimidating. And like, don't be intimidated by it. You know?
Right.
Come on.
Well, okay, let's talk about some of those places.
Sure.
In Avernus, what can one get up to in a blasted hellscape?
Jeez.
I mean,
yeah.
it's only a Sunday night, but I'm sure we can find something.
I'm sure we can find something, yeah. So the city, or not the city, but the plain is this red desert-like place, right? And the idea is that the sky is on fire and occasionally rains meteors and fireballs down, but that this is the lair or place in hell where you do battle, right? It's the Borderlands region of hell.
Right.
And it's here where most invasions from the Abyss or other fiendish planes are going to occur from. We're talking like the Great Wheel cosmology, it connects to the gate town of the Nine Hells of Beator, which is on the Outlands, sort of the plane of neutrality, basically. And so it's a kind of planar crossroads in and of itself, even though it's technically a lair of hell, because it's the one where other beings can get to the easiest.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, it serves as kind of a Borderlands region. It's a gatehouse, basically. And so when you think about it in those terms, it's like any other border region that you can think of and look to for inspiration. So you're going to find creatures there that aren't just devils, but other denizens native to hell that are just not part of that infernal hierarchy. You're going to find other fiends from neighboring planes that either wander there as part of mercenary companies or for their own purposes. Night hags are, of course, a big deal. But you might find, say, fire elementals or, ifrits that are there that are sort of conducting their own business. It's a hellish place, but it's not empty.
Yeah.
And because it's not empty and because it's been fought over so much, there's ruins and valuable things that have just been left and forgotten. There's all sorts of like weird magical remnants that are about that you can visit to do something. So for instance, it might be you find a pile made of the skulls of a mercenary company from the Blood War, and because this is hell, their spirits are still trapped there. But there's one there that you've got to go to talk to. You know, they have a piece of information that you want. So now you're searching through a giant, you know, pyramid-sized pile of skulls for the one specific one that you need, fighting off other scavengers and the like. Like, those are the kinds of adventures that you might have in low-level adventures in hell. And then you kind of like build your way up, you know? If you're in hell, it behooves you to find an infernal patron. You know, even though it's you're undoubtedly entering into an agreement with someone or something that's bad for you, how else are you going to survive? You know, like, what are you going to do?
I mean, that is kind of something that is touted in this book.
Yeah.
Which is the fact that there's going to be deals
Yes.
offered.
Yeah.
Some of them pretty great.
Yeah.
And for the low cost of just your soul. Jim, have you ever even seen your soul? You ever even used it?
I mean,
what do you need it for?
First off, I don't need it for much.
Yeah.
You know, now a D&D character, that's another story, right?
Yeah, that's
like,
true.
you know, they can be resurrected with their soul. They can be, you know, all kinds of things that you want to protect your soul for, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to have to, like fight for that thing back. The biggest one, of course, is resurrection, right? Like, if you don't have your soul available and you die, if it's not yours to keep, then you're done for, right? And I think that's probably the biggest threat that that devils and other soul bargainers would manifest is that, yeah, you can. What does it cost you? Nothing. You just do it. It's only later, after the fact, once you've enjoyed the benefit of that bargain, and it's time to pay the price upon death, that your character might have regrets, or as a player you might have regrets because, you know, you're just, I'll take this benefit and I'm not gonna worry about it.
Yeah.
You know, and especially if in a place where death saves work differently, it's easier to die or something along those lines. So, I don't know, what do you need with a soul? So the question I have then is like, do they care if it's your soul or just a soul?
Yeah.
Is the big thing. And you know, I go back and forth on this one. There are some times, and you know, maybe the devils do as well. It's just a part of the bargaining. But you know, if it's your soul, then the point of it isn't the soul. It's the temptation, the gradual wearing away of your morals, your principles, your integrity. It's just the little compromises that you make every day to keep up this bargain, to fulfill your end of it, to just be like, well, I just got to get this thing done. And it's the slow compromising of who you are that you don't notice till much later. That's what the devil's there for.
Yeah.
The soul is just a convenient byproduct that they're going to use to power their big rig.
Yeah.
You know, afterwards.
That's the thing. That's what I love about it is at the end of the day, it's just fuel. It's just fuel for the literal and metaphorical machines of war.
Sure, yeah.
But you touch on an interesting thing to remember for DMs, which is, you know, don't give the big deal right up front. Right?
Yes, yeah.
It's like you said, the death by 1,000 cuts.
It's
little
the death of
deaths.
1,000 cuts. It's
Yeah.
the little things. It's an imp just going like, yeah, I can get that thing for you. I can do this. It's
Just give me a piece of your finger.
Just give me a piece of that. You know, it's a sort of like for like exchange of something. Like, there have been times in, say, games that I've run where I've had. There's a particular horned devil who is interested in a party barbarian because they're like, hey, this barbarian's really great. Like, I would love to have this 12th level or 11th level barbarian on my side sometimes, you know, in my pocket. So here, I'm just going to give you my name. Don't worry about it. Just going to give it to you. And whenever you need me, whenever you think that it might be handy to have me around, just say it 3 times and I'll be there. But know this, whatever you ask for, I will ask for something like in return. And I like that bargain because it's like you put the power to tempt the character in the player's hands. And so the player now knows I have this ability, I can summon a devil, I can call upon their magic, I can get this benefit from them, whatever it is. Let's all be warlocks. And then you're saying like, okay, well, when you want to do that, you know, maybe it's that you invite them over because you need to ask them some questions. Well, guess what? That devil is then going to go like, all right, well then, like for like, then I need you to tell me about something that's valuable or important to you. Maybe someone else.
Yeah.
Report on someone else who we're then going to tempt and attempt to, you know, corrupt.
Yeah.
If it's like a combat related thing, then it's maybe like, yeah, you might be recruited to do a tour
in the Blood
War for a while, you know, or, you know, we're going to hire you out for this battle or something. But the idea there is to like let the player, you know, on a metagame level, let the player be in control of how much their character's tempted. so that they can then sort of work in like, yeah, I don't really want this. This is just something that's nice to have available, or an option, a get out of jail free card. But if they're into that kind of playing through a character that's slowly corrupting themselves, then giving them the means to do that is going to just help facilitate it, right? Yeah. So that's one of the ways that I like to get that kind of bargain rolling. Just be like, yeah, whatever you want, just exchange favors, quid pro quo. Devils love quid pro quo.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Quid pro quo. So,
yes.
Let's move on to, Mad Maggie's back there raising a war band right now.
Yes.
And we'll get to her in just a bit. But first, let's talk about another Denizen of Avernus, probably the most well-known.
Yes.
Because I want to go back to a point that you were making earlier about taking like pieces of real religion, mythology, whatever,
sure.
And then using it in oxymoron there, and then putting it in your fantasy world.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, basically, the story of Zariel is very close to the fall of Lucifer, right?
Sure, right, yeah.
And so, how does what's the one way you can think about that? Like, maybe not necessarily reflavoring it, but just like how does a DM like take that story and make it their own?
I think the interesting thing about Zariel's story is that she's a celestial, right?
Yeah.
And it's the zeal for defeating evil, for fighting evil, and the idea that you would lead a group into the heart of evil itself to combat it. And then the fall that happens when Zariel is either, depending on what D&D world it is, what story, there's all the variations on it, but the gist is that Zariel gets there, is somehow abandoned in hell, either by the forces that she brought with her, or because they're wiped out, or something, or she decides to go alone. And it's I'm going to like descend into the heart of darkness to defeat it, and yet it's in that moment that they are changed, that she's turned from the path of goodness and righteousness and turned towards more wicked purposes, and that zeal for fighting, for crusading, for battling evil then becomes just a bloodlust that needs to be satisfied.
Yeah, when all you do is hate, that's all you become, right? I mean, that's basically her thing.
Yeah, and so she's a cautionary tale, and I think probably a really good reason for why you don't see the involvement of Celestials more in these great big cosmic conflicts, and why when it comes down to it, why the player characters are the ones having to solve all these problems in these worlds, is that the intervention into these mortal affairs, or the intervention into cosmic conflicts by Celestials, like, they are of a substance that are like the gods, right? If you're going with baseline D&D, Celestials are sort of like the servants of the gods, so they have that kind of divine substance to them, and they have to be careful with that. Yeah. That their natures are such that whatever it is that they do, whatever actions that they pursue, whatever goals that they pursue it with a kind of like white hot essentialism.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's lawfulness and goodness, they transcend the mortal limits of those things to embody them. And when they start skirting that line between, is this really good? Is like, first off, violence and warfare and all these things, it's like people are still dying. Is that a good thing, that all those paladins and good wizards and holy warriors would just perish like that? Surely they could be doing better things elsewhere, right? You know, that's the kind of, once you start thinking in terms of those lines, like I'm gonna take all these lives who could be doing something to enrich others and going to spend them on a war in hell. Mm-hmm. Even though we can actually kill devils there's a possibility of us winning. Like, that's kind of one of those decisions that you go like, is that good? Like, are we the good guys still?
Yeah.
And I know that in baseline D&D, these, you know, part of the appeal of a hell is that you can go there and lawful good characters can just slaughter and murder away without fear of any moral consequence. But I think that it's one of those things where, regardless of the enemy that you're fighting, the act of engaging in these cosmological conflicts will change you. And it's you can play with a lot of things there where it's like, yeah, there's plenty of people who go to war or go to some kind of conflict or experience some kind of traumatic event, and it changes them in ways they don't want. They'd rather not become that person.
Yeah, look at Daenerys.
Sure, right. But exactly, right? Like, you go through these series of things, frustrations and setbacks and compromises.
Yeah.
And you have a passion and a fire for something, particularly for a Celestial who can't really change their nature that much.
Yeah, they are absolute. Yeah.
Right. And then once they're corrupted, that intensity gets reversed and turned into something else. And now it's like, I love fighting the blood war. I can't wait to kill more demons.
Yeah.
And I also rule the first layer of hell, and that's how you become a fiend. That's what happens, right?
Mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished.
It's just on the aircraft carrier. Zari's at the podium.
Yes, but like think about it this, like moving beyond just Forgotten Realms and sort of like that cosmology, just thinking about your world in D&D and your homebrew worlds and where the place of hell fits in. What's the relationship between Celestials and Fiends? Is it that model where the Fiends are sort of represent a fallen type of Celestial, And if that's the case, why are there multiple types of Fiends? How do they interact with that cosmology? And I've certainly played in worlds where it's like, all of the devils used to be angels, and they rebelled against their creator.
Yeah, maybe the lessers could be their creations or attempts at creation, which is why they are lesser. And they could never create their own power.
Yeah, in the world in the one that I made, devils rebelled against the demons rebelled against the devils. They're sort of like the second rebellion. Oh. And that's why the devils hate them so much. It was like, listen, we rebelled against the good guys to make a better world for us. Why would you rebel against us? And the demons are just like,
it's just the nature.
Too many rules.
Is that not the nature of life?
Our problem was the rules, not the goodness.
Yeah.
Anyway. So, like, those are concepts you can play around, and if you're chomping at the bit, you don't want to wait till September. You can start working those things into your game, and then when Descent into Avernus comes out, you can start using some of the rules for that and everything. But that's that slow corruption of angels. Like it speaks to the power of the plane itself.
Yeah.
That hell isn't just like the place where mortal souls go to suffer punishment. It is the location in the multiverse that represents this moral outlook, this outlook of dominance, of conquest, of manipulation, of lies and deceit and corruption and everything. The way I kind of see it is it's like, there's a difference between outright lying and deceptions. I almost like playing my devils, like, they never lie. Why would they lie to you? Yeah. They'll manipulate, they'll deceive, they'll make you lie to yourself. Mm-hmm. They will, do everything they can to undermine your confidence in your own reality, your own world, but they're not going to outright lie to you. That's what demons do. You can never trust a demon. All they do is lie. But a devil, there's enough truth there to keep you guessing. Yeah. To keep you wondering where I stand with them and how I should interact with them.
Yeah. Most definitely. There are other NPCs like in this book, like Mad Maggie, a night hag, which again, going to hell.
Very much the same vein.
You got to go get down there to change. Mm-hmm. It's like your it's like your spa weekend where you come out a new person, get exfoliated with evil. And get some extra powers, and then you become a warband leader if you want.
If you want. I mean, that sounds pretty awesome myself. There's other kinds of creatures down there. Night hags, very much in the same vein of this kind of manipulator, right? A traditional night hag is someone that takes a good person and slowly, through the manipulation of their dreams and turning them into nightmares, drives a person who is, good and seeks to be an upstanding person to acts of wickedness and cruelty. By as the parent of a toddler and as someone who's been through and seen the effects of extreme sleep deprivation can have on a person, it's like that's a very good way to drive someone to acts of wickedness and cruelty. Just take away their good night's sleep. Yeah. So that kind of level of that's the level of manipulation you're talking about here, right?
Yeah. What turned you? Oh, I just needed a nap.
That's
all it was. Just the littlest thing.
It's just the littlest thing, but that plays with those themes that the lawful evil realm of hell deals in. It's the little things.
Yeah.
It's the tiny compromises. It's the moment when your character doesn't say no or stand up against an injustice. It's the moment where you just like let something slide because it'd be easier. You don't do the thing because it's just like you're too tired. And those are the times when the devil goes, all right, well, the next time that happens here, I'm going to be there, and I'm going to push you just a little bit further. I'm going to push you a little bit further. So these kinds of games and these sorts of campaigns do best with like over a long term, with characters that are heavily invested in sort of themselves. So having players who are like ready to fully flesh out how their characters interact with the world, whether that's through an elaborate backstory that they come up with themselves or through tools that they generate and use at the table in play to kind of like spontaneously generate that. Having players who know their characters well enough to be like, yeah, these are their moments of moral failings. Like that gives you as a DM to go like, all right, well, that's something that maybe an imp would find out. That's why they're always invisible, just watching you. Like how else do you think the devils figure out all these secrets for how to manipulate you?
Yep, all those ceiling cats are actually just imps.
Right, exactly.
But they are watching. Anyway.
Yes.
But there's a whole host of other like entities.
Yes.
One of the ones that I love that they introduced in this book, I don't know if I'm going to say this word right.
Yeah, all right.
Krokektoic.
All right.
I'm not sure. I'm sure it's a takeoff of Krakatoa.
Okay.
Or something. Probably not. I probably just made that up. But it's this beast that you know who created. And the way they created it is just like the most disgusting thing. They ate 1,000 hydroloths and then vomited this thing forth just so they could get his troops across the river Styx without them having fucking remembering.
Right.
Losing their memory.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that is awesome, and I can't, excuse me while I go throw up right quick.
For one, yes.
And make my own little one. But I don't know, it's just, the art of it is very evocative.
Yes.
And it kind of makes you want to throw up just looking at it.
Just a little bit, yeah, just a little bit. But it's that. First off, the creation of it is great because it has that kind of like mythical quality of like, yeah, a demon prince would have to like vomit up a bunch of other fiends to like create this thing.
Yeah.
But it also speaks to the difficulties of waging the blood war and the fact that the river Styx is a kind of a terrible river to have to use for amphibious operations. But the fact that you get to play out fantasy amphibious operations on the river Styx is pretty cool. So it's like
That'd be
pretty badass.
Yeah,
so there's abyssal ships, right, that are sort of these demon vessels that you sail down the river Styx. There are various devils and demons and other fiends that are immune to the effects of it. And so like having this monster be there is like, it's a legacy of the blood war. How many utterly unique monsters that were created by demon princes or archdevils or just mages that they recruited for the purposes of this battle into the blood war, just wandering around Avernus. Burrowing into ancient scrap heaps and the like, or finding old caves or craters created by these hellish fireballs that rain down. Like the landscape might be populated by these beasts of war driven to consume and rage and everything. And there's a reason why this is a Borderlands, right? This is the lawless and part of hell because it's constantly sees battle.
Yeah.
Everything you find in a real life battlefield or country that's at war would be present here, just way worse.
Yeah.
Way worse. So like, you might think of the equivalent of, say, infernal mines or the like, weapons that are designed to just be left for others to discover, to destroy indiscriminately. Or you might run across, say, deserters, people who were forcibly taken to fight in the blood war and now are just left wandering about the wasteland. Having to make their own way there, joining up with night hags like Mad Maggie to just, survive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when it's that or Oblivion, I mean, you might as well hang on for another day.
Sure. And you're like, who wants to die in hell? Right. That seems like the worst place in the world to die.
One of them, most definitely.
And so you can imagine, like whoever ends up there, for whatever means, that they're probably going to do everything they can to survive, including becoming a total just selfish, manipulative asshole.
Yeah.
Because that's what it requires of them to survive. Again, there is a very satisfying way of like, yeah, the devils just arrange things in your life so that the only way forward is to compromise your ideals.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate winning scenario for them. So yeah. Any other denizens you caught your-
Well, no, what I was going to say, as you were talking about the history of the Blood War and like all these things that would have been created, I mean, definitely DMs can look at our own history and just look up all the experimental vehicles and weapons that humans have created in the pursuit of war.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't take much to just put a little fiendish. It shoots fire now.
I was gonna say,
it's got legs and walks around and does all that.
Yeah, I was gonna say all of those vehicles now remove all of the moral constraints.
Yeah.
And all of the physical constraints. That kept those vehicles and weapons of war from destroying our own world. Those weapons are present in a blood war. Those weapons are present on Avernus as half-destroyed wrecks of partially buried, leftovers of detritus from battles. It's used weapons and abandoned, mercenaries. It's living weapons. It's spells that summon all manner of creatures and things to fight, and then keep them there. And so this place can be a weird, dangerous part of your world. And depending on how you're getting there, like for instance, for me, I just put a permanent portal to the first layer of hell within 2 days of the starting town of the campaign that I ran. And at one point, I think like the fourth adventure, had a cyber fiend kidnap one of the players. That's how they ended up there. But like, if you want them to, as a dungeon master, if you want these things to be part of your game, and you don't want to have to wait for them to get plane shift, you're gonna have to put the means for them to get there within their reach. And why not just leave a door wide open for infernal adventures?
Yeah, and you have to have the guy outside the portal going, oh, that portal there?
Yeah.
Nobody goes there.
Nobody goes through that portal right there.
Yeah. That will ensure they walk right through it. So, anything else with the creatures there? First off, abyssal chickens. I love it. I'm going to use the hell out of them.
Sure, yeah.
The thought of like little like land piranhas that can fly, but they prefer to run around.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I love that. I love the fact you can get them as familiars. Makes fun. Flock of familiars is, of course,
Flock.
now the spell that I think of with things like that.
Yeah. It's pretty great. I'm just imagining those videos of like the islands in Japan of cats. Except they're abyssal chickens.
They're abyssal chickens,
like,
definitely.
Oh, it's awful. It's just
terrible.
horrible.
It's terrible.
It's a terrible way to die.
God. I would say like the thing to think about that I like, and one of the things that it's where that Mad Max meets D&D kind of element to Descent into Avernus that we've seen previews of is the idea of there being warlords and sort of a part of this plane of hell or layer of hell that there's space for the players to carve out a name for themselves, a realm for themselves, and that the players could go, well, I can just throw together some war machines and like become a warlord in hell. Like that sounds pretty sweet.
Yeah.
And so it's the introducing of that into it, and you can see where, if you look at say if you're looking at the devils. Let me get my words in my mouth real quick. If you're looking at the devils, and you're looking at it from the top down, there's all these archdukes, there's the Dark Eight, there's all this. It might seem as though this organization is rigid and well-defined, and that there's no room for uncertainty, and therefore there's really no room for adventure. And I would say that like that's maybe that's more like the Modrons.
Yeah.
Right? The Modrons are these mechanistic, hierarchical kind of things. The devils are there. Their hierarchy is based entirely on power and abuse of power and of lording power over another. And in a lot of ways, the kind of attitude of a devil, as was mentioned in the preview stream on Friday, is like they're sort of like exist in the worst type of corporate environment. And their only way to advance is to like catch the ear of and the attention of a superior who's like willing to promote them. And that superior is going to use all sorts of rules and standards and benchmarks and quotas and everything to keep them there. Bit of a personal history here. I have spent a lot of time working in very large bureaucratic organizations. I will not say more, but if you catch me, around the convention sometime, I'll perhaps tell you about it.
Yeah.
And it's
a taxing conversation.
Certainly. And it's a place where you're constantly under observation.
Yeah.
Everything you do is monitored, tracked, timed, measured, and you're routinely sort of like run through these numbers on a regular basis. Oh, you didn't do enough this here and that here. Well, I was sick that day or didn't feel well. That doesn't matter. They still need to talk to you about it.
Yeah.
And so that kind of like experience of being supervised and superveiled and sort of, or surveilled in this case, I don't make up words, it's fine. And like
it's common now.
Sure, certainly. And like that changes you. And you can see how as you progress through the ranks of devils from imp to spine, from larva to imp to spine to devil, all the way up to pit fiend, that these creatures would develop a hyper paranoia, an attitude of selfishness and narcissism that's unlike probably most things that you'd see. They're constantly having to look out for their back. They're whatever. They're opportunists and tempters and very pragmatic, but they're also like not. I don't see them as hidebound or uncreative. Mm-hmm. If they can get away with it, they'll lie. If they can get away with it, they'll steal and cheat and whatever, especially in the face of someone using their bureaucratic power over them. And so like, that's the kind of attitude that I take when I think of devils, is like, they're always trying to get ahead. You, the player character, are the means by which they will get ahead.
Yeah.
They cannot achieve their advancement without you. And they just don't care how that affects you. And so like that's where I start when it comes to like devils, and they're very satisfying to play. And you don't necessarily have to always have them be like monsters or anything.
No, yeah, you just need to treat the players like what they are. They're just cogs in the machine, man.
They're just cogs in the machine, yeah.
But one thing I do like though about all of this is the leftovers of the Blood War and the oil that kind of gets the thing moving.
Sure, yes.
One of the concepts they introduced in here, or maybe it was there before, but demon ichor, right?
Yeah.
Like seen in a couple games, the effects if you get it on you, which you don't.
Yeah.
But also like what it does. It's like freaking nitro boost for these war machines.
Sure.
Just using the leftover like deteriorated bits of thousands of generations of demons that have died in the Blood War, and just pooled up. And, thinking very much like Skin of Evil. There should be like some kind of like ichor, like sentient ichor monster.
Yes.
That.
Yes. Yeah, like demonic ooze type thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I do like that. So for one, it plays on that like the idea of there being the worlds of this D&D games being inherently magical, right? So like, what is it that's the substance? What is it that that's the stand-in for like fossil fuels in this case? And it's not just like it's not the outcome of a natural process. It's the outcome of a magical event.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I absolutely love about fantasy and D&D is the replacing of natural processes with magical events to sort of just create more magic in the world. But like. That whole angle of these war machines, the things that are taken from the great war constructs and titans and warforged and the like that end up on the first layer of hell, is like building scrap machines out of them, using souls to power them, using demonic ichor and blood and viscera to give them a boost. It does touch on that moral quandary that Jeremy Crawford and Perkins and others were sort of like talking about that first day of like, is this okay? Should we be doing this? It's like, isn't there a way to rescue these souls? Like,
that are already minted in these coins?
For what? Like, can you not somehow get them? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. And it's it's that element that I find really fun, because souls do have a place in D&D. They have a reality. You can visit the place where they're made. It's on the positive energy plane. Yeah. They clearly have a distinct identity. They can stick with a person, although I think elves sort of go through cycles of reincarnation, but for most everybody else, it's this is your soul. It's utterly unique in the world, and so it's a valuable thing. I kind of think souls are the ultimate form of currency in D&D. Once you've gone past gems and gold and all other kinds of things, it's really just souls that matter.
Yeah.
And so it would raise questions for players. I think it should, as they grapple with like, we might have to use these weapons to defeat our enemies here, to get out of here. But like, is this a good thing? Like, what's this going to do to us when we get back? And honestly, like, it's the after effects of that when we get after the adventure, as you deal with the characters returning home, that I find it equally as interesting. You know, this should change people, the visit to hell.
Oh yeah, definitely. But let's talk about these Infernal War Machines in a little bit greater detail.
Oh yeah.
Because like you said, you've talked about all the leftovers, cast-offs from the past battles of the Blood War, and just thinking of the crazy, bolted, welded on, insane Mad Max fucking shit that you could get up to.
Yes, yeah.
Like,
I'm with you.
I want to create like a freight train from hell through hell. That is just like that's what I want.
Yeah.
When we finally do get to play this, that's what I'm going to go for. I want it like 3 or 4 cars. I want a nice engine up front.
Yeah.
It's probably going to take like 10 coins.
Yes.
So we're just going to be burning through souls.
Yeah. Like
we should just do an evil campaign in hell.
I mean, for one, like that's a great way to do it. I think you could set an entire campaign in hell, where you're like Blood War mercenaries or you know, something like that, or even just like veterans who were left here and you've had to survive, and you're sort of like on the outs with the other warlords.
Here's what I think a devil would do. I've contracted you for 6 months in the Blood War. They call you in for it, and then the battle's over, and they leave with their armies, and you're like, well, come on, no. Your contract was to fight. You fought.
Yeah, you fought.
Well done.
You're done. Yeah.
We're going to get out of here.
Yeah.
Good luck.
I hope you prepped in banishment. So it's like, there's that, right? You stay there, stick around for a while. But these war machines are something that I find interesting in D&D. You know, we've had since the beginning constructs, automatons, things like that.
Yeah.
And the longer D&D kind of goes on, the more science fantasy elements get added to it or taken away. It sort of like fluctuates and flows, and every sort of like generation or so, it seems to, you know, change a bit. And
yeah.
But it's the idea that like they've always been present. These robots, these you know, mechanical constructs are already there. Like, let's just take it a step further. Like, why can't we drive one of these things?
They already have wheels.
Yeah, right. You know, and especially ones where it's like these conflicts have been raging on a cosmic level across the multiverse. So it's like, is everywhere in the Prime at the same technological level then? Or are there not places in the Prime that have different technological states? And if they're magical, which they are because it's D&D, then that technology is mixed with magic, if not purely magical and not really relying on any sort of engineering principles at all.
Yeah.
And like, use those here. It's going to be, you know, it's a really awesome idea, and something that I'm excited to see introduced into D&D. I'm glad that Saltmarsh has rules for you know, ship to ship, vehicle combat, and the like, just sort of give DM some meat to chew on. And this part of Descent into Avernus is one of those where I'm like, yeah, I would love to have more sort of comprehensive vehicle rules, to include those in other games, to have car chases and sort of like just the kinetic energy of a chase through a hellish landscape or something like that, or like reusing them for your own. Like, what if you bring some of these engines back? What if you capture one and you find a different way to power it? You know, this is D&D. There's all sorts of ways that magic can power a machine. And you know, now you have this kind of setting where maybe you have a big vehicle and you take it back with you, or you have a fleet of them, or it's something. I think it's an element of D&D that can be very fun. I've always wished with D&D that was more like mounted combat friendly, and having solid rules for vehicle combat can like further support that, because you can have, say, you know, squadrons of nightmare riders that are accompanying your infernal machines, or you know, mechanical equestrian constructs that are there as sort of like support vehicles. The TIE fighters to the Infernal War Machines Star Destroyer. You can do a lot of fun things and have like these really awesome, fluid, fast-paced combats and action scenes, and just like offer a lot of different experiences for your players. The part of the book I'm probably most excited for is the vehicle stuff.
Yeah, because it's supposed to be pretty comprehensive as far as like building, upgrading, kind of changing it out, and being very anyway.
Yeah, and like I said, we have not done our full review of Ghosts of Saltmarsh. We just got the book and have not really had a chance to look into it. But just like flipping through the sections there where they're talking about vehicle combat and that, I'm already like, oh my god. First off, it's head and shoulders what's available in the DMG, but it builds on that. You know, so if you've been using the options in the DMG, you won't have to like completely start over. But it's just a really, it's really fun. And I think that it's a chance to do something new with your games. So yeah.
Oh, most definitely. And any chance to actually use that land vehicle tool proficiency.
Oh God.
Oh my God.
Yes.
I think I've seen it used once. It's like it was a wagon chase scene.
Oh, the wagon chase scene.
They were going through town.
Sure,
but,
sure.
You know, I think this is much more
So
fun.
would you say then that like that there's a different proficiency for these kinds of land vehicles, or we just like lump them all?
We'll lump it all in.
Yeah.
Because it's more about like, I mean, to me, like the land vehicle proficiency is kind of part and parcel a little bit with like just knowing horse care and horse maintenance.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But it's more just like I know how to put a bit and bridle and all that on a horse, hook it up to a wagon, and I know how to move it.
Yeah.
But then you have to remember, that's still moving something at a certain speed and knowing how fast you can go through turns.
Certainly,
just
yeah.
knowing how to drive your wagon.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just some pedals and a steering wheel. I mean, yeah.
Not too much different.
Yeah,
not too much different.
You know how fast you need to go on that curve so you don't tip over at Dead Man's Pass. I mean, come on.
Yes.
But that's where you want to bring the bad guys, so they go over the edge.
So they go over the edge.
You
Yes,
know.
they're not that familiar with it. So yeah, I can get you with that, and I think it fits with the, like sort of the 5th edition mindset of we don't need to break things down into like too much minutia. You know, take this proficiency, take this one thing. It sort of covers a broad range of skills and the like, and really like it removes. You know, this is one of those things. Big digression here, but like when you include things like vehicles, or if you're playing like a different genre and it's like cyberpunk, this is a thing that say cyberpunk games sometimes have, where it's like the hacker does a thing while the rest of the group does nothing, or the driver of the rigged vehicle does a thing while the rest of the group does nothing. D&D mirrors that sometimes with like the rogue going and doing a thing, and the rest of the group does nothing. And so the idea of these big sort of construct vehicles that you build custom means that you can have a vehicle for your party that gives them all something to do, and it's not just like the one person with that one proficiency doing something.
Yeah.
There's like something for everyone to do. So maybe it's like the person driving, but then there's another person crawling along the outside fixing things up, and they're using their tinker's proficiency or something like that. This is a great place for you to throw in your artificer, and if I was placing bets, I would not be surprised if we see an artificer sometime around this, because this is the kind of character that has a lot of tool proficiencies, has a lot of ability to fix things, is mechanical, is the blend of technology and magic is present there. And the idea of playing like a tiefling artificer that just like scrounges the scrap metal of Avernus and builds little custom demon ichor injectors and you know, bespoke wheels and treads for your war vehicles is a really cool concept. And
Well, yeah.
I'm here for that.
Yeah, and like you said, you know, this is for the whole crew, so you need to
Yes.
have somebody up on the freaking acid bile cannon.
Oh, yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you have the people in the back covering, you know, the shields in the back and
cold iron bolt throwers.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it is Mad Max, right?
Yeah.
Which, going back to why I think that Spelljammer's in the works, it's like now you have a ship, kind of.
Sure.
You just need to take off now. Sorry, I'll shut up. I'll quit banging that drum. But I don't know. I love the aspect of having that introduced into the game, and just so many games being birthed that are just, these are your death races, your Mad Maxes, it doesn't matter what it is, insert post-apocalypse with crazy cars. And I'm on board for that. I've already bought my ticket.
Yeah, certainly. You know, and like, I know we've spoke before, and I'm like Mad Max movies, all of them. I like, to me, my favorite Mad Max movie is the very first one, and just because I like it. And I like the post-apocalyptic world of that is a great sort of like model for what a Dungeons and Dragons campaign looks like. So if you take something like, say, Fury Road. Fury Road is about the story about a small group of isolated settlements that are trying to trade with each other, and the weird power dynamics that come up from the tyrants that rule these places, and you know a group of characters who sort of come together to try to escape that, and then have to sort of don't back down. Now we just have to kill the guy and take this place over ourselves. It's a very D&D story.
Yeah.
Right? It's a lawless place. D&D does well in places where there's not a lot of like structure and rules and things like that to like confine and constrain the player characters, right? There's room for adventure when there's not an overarching like authority or power. I know this seems weird to say because we're talking about hell, but this is the part of hell that is lawless, doesn't have that. And so any kind of setting where you have these isolated settlements, and in the case of Avernus, this might be cities that were pulled there at different times and places, and they've had to do what they have to do to survive, or the ruins of them that have been taken over by other creatures that sort of live there. Looking at Mad Max, the world of Mad Max, the kind of stories that are there, the sorts of like remembering that in the context of these movies that all of these people, for the most part, used to be us.
Yeah.
Right? They used to have day jobs and do bullshit and have cell phones and all these things, but now their world has changed. They have changed. Like, that's what I love about the Mad Max movies, is that it describes people who used to be us, who've gone through the sort of trauma of a civilizational collapse, and then of course the barbarity that comes up, some that can sometimes come up after that. And it's one of those things where when I think about that in D&D, I go like, that's what I want out of my D&D, and many of the worlds that I've created for myself are like that. So it's good to see, like, from an official book, like that's where their head's at as well. That those are the kind of conceptual spaces they're playing in.
Yeah, don't harsh the players' vibes. But yeah, the Bleeding Citadel, right?
Yes.
Because that's where Zariel's sword, right, is kept.
Yeah.
But that could be one of the settlements that we're talking about here.
Sure.
But that gets you closer to the power structure in place.
Yes.
If you want that.
Yeah. And so for me, it's like you could in Planescape, right? There's this the idea of the border towns, right? There's if you think of the Outer Realms as like a pie, right? The plane of neutrality is like the crust of it on top. Mm-hmm. And then as you slice it up, as you go down into an individual slice, that's where you get into the individual planes. Well, the gate towns sit on top of that crust. And if too much, this is the sort of an element of Planescape that I'm curious to see how they incorporate, if they do at all. But in Planescape, if too much of a certain outlook, too many people who would subscribe to a certain philosophical viewpoint, or too many people of a certain alignment get in one place, it will change the physical character of that place and shift it to its, the place where it's more appropriate for it to be. So it's set
That's what we're trying to do in Austin.
Certainly, right. And so it's one way how they kind of like describe, like, not every place you go is full of one type of person. It's just predominantly that type. So the Borderlands, the gatehouses on the Borderlands are, gate towns on the Borderlands are these weird places where it's like there's a lot of fighting to keep the balance. So you have, like, say, people from Hell who are trying to like shift the gate town into Hell proper, who might be going and say propagandizing and trying to whip up public opinion in a certain direction, whereas you have those who are subscribe to like other moral alignments or cosmological alignments trying to do the same thing. And so these gate towns are like these ideological battlegrounds where the stakes are literally reality itself. And then the first layer of Hell is just littered with the places where the Hell people won and dragged those cities into the first layer, not to mention the whole towns and metropolises and suburbs and the like from the prime material that devils might have just won through bargains or whatever, and later come to collect a debt on. So it's a place where you can have, say, desperate survivors around a makeshift fort trying to cling to this like last resource that they have, which is going to get them home. It's it's places where you can have like, this is where we all come to trade and do business and the like, but the rules here are a little different. Places where people who've forgotten what their lives were like before they got here have made new lives for themselves, constructed new mythologies for themselves, and new ways of explaining their existence. All of that is present in Hell and ripe for adventure.
Yeah, and I would assume that Hell is the kind of place where you just don't take like free like food from strangers.
Oh God, no.
Even if you're
Jeez,
dying.
no.
Even if you're dying of starvation, dehydration.
Yeah.
You see just the most just innocent looking person with a cup of water.
Yeah.
It's like, there goes that soul.
Yeah. So like in sci-fi gaming, there's a concept. There are concepts that are really fun that I like, of like the generational ship. You know, you're passing through some sort of terrible dimension in order to get to the place where you're going, and you're stuck there.
Yeah.
Right. And all the things that the crew gets stuck would have to do to survive, and then like later on you sort of like meet the people who are descendants of that. Like taking that idea and applying it here. I mean, that's where tieflings come from, for crying out loud. And I almost kind of think that like tieflings are the prime denizen of most of the lower planes in a lot of places. Is that they're just the offspring of different fiends and the immortal creatures that have made their way here. And that some of them have survived, some of them haven't. They live here long enough, they become residents of the plane. You know, and that in itself will change them. They will physically change, as well as their sort of moral outlook and everything. So it's just a way to like present new challenges to the characters, to present an environment that's different, and like all across the board. This is one of the first like adventures that D&D has put out in at least a year that I've been like, I'm listening. Like I'm here for this. Like Waterdeep stuff, I'm glad everybody liked it. I hope you've had a blast with your campaigns. Maybe one day we'll pick up Mad Mage just to like have the maps and everything, and feast in the massiveness of it.
Yeah.
But right here, Descent into Avernus is one of those where I'm like, yeah, I want to like use this in at least 2 campaigns. I can see how it can be useful for the games we run on Twitch, where we've already been to Avernus. We've already got involved in hellish politics.
Yeah.
And then a certain epic game that we are in the planning stages of, I can definitely see this being of prime relevance.
Yeah, and I try to include hell in my game.
It's just
fun.
To
just dip their toes in there. Let them go to a house of ill repute in Avernus.
Let's talk about that for a minute. Let's just talk about adventures that we've had in hell, because this is one of those things that I do think intimidates a lot of people.
Yeah.
Planar adventures are just intimidating overall. Hell especially is one. I think the only place I can think of that's like more, how do I run an adventure here, is like Mount Celestia. Mm-hmm. When I think about like what would it be like to adventure on the plane of lawful goodness, and I go, well, I don't know yet. Like it is one of those. But hell intimidates a lot of people. I think they look at it as like, yeah, how could you adventure there without like overwhelming the party immediately and everything? So like, what games have you run set in hell? Like how have you approached it?
My most recent one was in Starward Bound, and I mean they were already 11th level, so I knew that they could handle it. But it was just a mission to go to a house of ill repute, which of course don't see any of the people there. They're all succubi and incubi. If you go into that room, you're probably not coming out. These soul coins got to get made somehow.
Sure.
Which, after reading more about this, is totally what I'm going to do. It's like this place is actually like a
front,
like a front that does counterfeit soul coin manufacture. So, they go there for a completely different reason. But I thought that, I don't know, I wasn't really worried about overwhelming them at that level. I've never really honestly run anything lower level like you did.
Yeah.
But we have played a bit in Hell and in the Abyss in the past. Like I remember our Planescape game where I was Jarek Reynolds, the knife thrower.
Yes.
And I mean, we got sold to some devils from people in the City of Brass.
The City of Brass.
They sold us to devils, and we got transported to Hell. I forgot what layer it was.
It was second.
It was the second layer.
It was the second layer of hell. So yeah, my experience with it was like that, right? It was that campaign because it was by accident. It wasn't by design or anything. I had a player who was like, "Hey, you're inspired by this one video game, right? That's where you're getting all these NPCs and ideas from." Yeah. And I was like, no, you guys get sold to devils. Of course, yes, I was being inspired by a video game that I enjoyed, Quest for Glory 1, So You Want to Be a Hero.
Yeah.
And
Ryan pretty much picked up like.
It took him a while, but we were well into the game when it happened.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I can't really switch gears now. How should we do this? And I don't remember how it happened, or the circumstances, but it's like you were captured by these. Yeah, you're right. You're captured by these.
There's a whole thing going on over here.
Certainly is.
It's pretty awesome.
By these Frits, these fire genies, and sold into slavery, and the devils bought you, and you guys escaped or fought your way out at some point.
Well, Josh, that's where he was playing Jack Burton, and he jumped out of the transport hundreds of feet in the air, and I remember you rolled damage, and he had 1 hit point left.
Yes, this was one of those instances in D&D where you just have to accept that the falling out of the sky and hit points.
It does X amount of damage, and while you're like, I guess you could survive that maybe, by the letter of the law, he had 1 hit point left.
Sure, yeah.
So anyway, then after that, we pretty much escaped, because then that transport came down city level, and we all started to break out and go separate ways, and then somehow we regrouped. But
snuck into Dis through the sewers.
Yeah, had to fight an abyssal constrictor.
Yeah.
So we were, and by then I think we were only 5th or 6th level.
It was not. Yeah, it was not that high. I recall it being there were a couple of tense moments, but then you guys basically started to work. Do enough for the various power brokers that you had met.
Yeah.
So that you could move about the city sort of freely. This is one of those places where the compromise of being in hell and the danger of being in hell is that you've got to find someone who is willing to not, capture you. You have to find someone who's willing to talk to you, who's willing to negotiate and do business. And because the devils can die in hell, if you kill one there, they're not formed out of spirit matter on the prime material plane. They get a new body every time they come. It's like as if you traveled to hell through the astral spell, or the astral plane, using astral projection, then you could be fine. You're just a spirit being there, and you'll be all right. But if you physically travel there, then you're physically there. And the devils are physically there, and they can be killed there permanently.
Yeah.
And so there is a sort of willingness to talk, to cut deals. And the type of play style that I really like, which is one of, let's talk to all the monsters first, and before we decide if we want to kill them, it's an extension of that kind of gameplay, which is one of all options are on the table. Negotiation is an option, and the best way to get what you want is through the expenditure of as few resources as possible.
Yeah. Sounds like Bard speak to me, Jim Davis.
Well, first off, Bards do it very well,
Yeah.
but it's a type of player mindset that creates morally gray situations.
Oh yeah.
Right? If I go in there with playing and say no, it's right and wrong, black and white, everyone here is a devil, needs to die. That may be true in some sense, but that's not necessarily the game I want to run or necessarily play in,
Yeah.
So having players who are willing to negotiate is a big step as well.
Yeah, which in that one we did. And
Yeah.
the one thing I do remember about that was the very vibrant marketplace in hell, the hellish marketplace. It really, I think it was when Hellboy 2, The Golden Army, and they go down in the Goblin Marketplace.
Yeah.
I had very similar feelings about that, except obviously it was probably a little warmer in hell.
Sure, certainly, yeah.
But that was a fun campaign, and I remember initially having some trepidation about doing it because it's but isn't a pit fiend just going to eat us?
Yeah.
What? If we go this way in this campaign, how are we going to live?
Yeah.
And you're just it's just a little warmer.
It's just a little warmer, and so there's a lot of different ways to sort of simulate the hostility of an environment like hell. And of course, in baseline D&D, each layer has a different theme, and it's really only I think 3 of the layers that have that blasted, fiery wasteland kind of feel to them. There's others that are completely frozen. They're glacial oceans, and others that are sort of acidic bogs and swamps and things. None of them are great for mortal life, but there's room there to maneuver about, to move, to survive, and adventure, because the point of all of this is to not create conditions under which the players feel too constrained, right? To create conditions under which the players feel I can go here, I can do this thing. There's nothing worse for a game than players feeling nothing they do will change their outcomes or succeed. And that is how you get campaigns that kind of grind to a halt. And if as a dungeon master you have not explicitly said, And this is really just for people who aren't, used to this level of kind of adventuring. But if you haven't explicitly said like, yeah, I'm not, it's not like pure death out here.
Yeah.
There's places to go, things to do. You can maneuver about, and just like letting them know that's as a heads up, that can help alleviate some of that paralysis that comes from players. Because the last thing you want is a player who doesn't engage with all this cool stuff to tempt them and lead them down the path to moral turpitude, and all that kind of thing.
Well,
have fun with it.
The path to becoming a warlord is fraught with tough decisions.
Absolutely.
The hard choices, Jim.
Oh, so many hard choices.
Yeah.
The tough decisions that no one else is willing to make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not unless your name is Shepard. So, what are some of the other things that are coming out of this Avernus book that you like? I mean, they have introduced some new magic, some magic items, or reintroduced, I guess maybe is a better way to put it. Along with we've talked about the demon ichor and the coins, which I learned last night. You don't want to bite them because they scream.
Okay, yeah.
So
good
pro tip,
yeah.
Unless you're into that, no judgment.
I think I'm most looking for, apart from like the appendices and stuff that'll have like tools and kits and the like, I'm curious to see about like the story of this place. I know that it involves the city of Elturil, which is in the Forgotten Realms, and in the context of that, Elturil is a place that was once ruled by a vampire, and there was this like war to oust the vampires that was like, during the day the forces of goodness would win, but at night these vampires and their foes would come back, and in order to kind of defeat this foe, something happened. Now I'm really just familiar with it through Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, and there's clearly some like stuff they're not telling us there, but like it was one of the entries in Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide that when I read it I was like, holy shit. Like, this is a place that demands adventure. It is a place that feels fantastical and wondrous, and a place that would exist in a D&D world. It's essentially sort of like a city that has a second sun that they're not quite sure where it came from, but it burned away all the undead, got rid of their undead problem entirely. And then a kind of a holy militant order that has grown up around a prior sort of expedition to hell, in which a bunch of Elturil paladins and holy wars and the like led an expedition and said, a raid basically into hell. They call them Hell Riders, and then they came back and kind of created this order of paladins. And so to me, I was like, okay, they got a second sun that is a sun, right? Burns away undead. I of course want to know all the sociological and architectural implications of having a sun sit about a mile away from you, and what that might do, and never getting night in your city.
Yeah, what's it going to do to your circadian rhythms?
Certainly.
All these people aren't going to sleep that well. Maybe that's why they tend towards being zealots.
You can see how.
Now we're back to, if you don't get a nap,
something bad's going to happen. But it also represents a sort of theocratic nation state within the Sword Coast, and is sort of a first of its kind. There's not really like anything similar to a nation state, or in this case, just a state, not necessarily a nation. There's a big difference.
Yeah, no. Not going to debate that point. Not going to debate that.
And like, it's unique in that sense. Most of the other places in the Sword Coast are city-states. Mm-hmm. They're small little, urban communities that have like satellites. This is like everywhere the light that this touches, these cities are a part of it. And
but that shadowed part, we must never go there.
Never go there.
Anyway.
And so it's a rather, it's just sort of large nation state that's being built and built up. It's paladins and second sons, and just like, this is a place that feels ripe for adventure. And so when I saw that it's sort of included in there, and I was like, I'm not necessarily want to know anymore. I'll spoil myself when the book comes out or whatever, but I'm glad that that's being used, because it really was one of those places in Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide that I was like, this is cool. This is like legit cool about the Forgotten Realms. And there's not a lot of things that I usually say that about. I'm much more of a gonzo weird fantasy kind of guy. Yeah. And the more traditional high fantasy, high magic kind of settings, those are for other people, and I'm fine with that. But every now and then something pops up, you're like, oh yeah, that looks awesome. Yeah, I'll get down on some traditional fantasy for that. Mm-hmm. Because that seems really cool.
Yeah, most stuff.
So yeah. Anyway, that's sort of more what's in the book. You were asking about more like the other products, though, right? Or
Well, I mean, I'm about to move into that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All
here.
right. I jumped ahead of it.
No, it's
okay.
all good. It's all good. Why don't you run us through like this essentials pack here?
Sure. So one of the other things that they announced is this D&D Essentials kit, and it's like
Yeah.
as I see it, and I understand it's like a supplement to your starter kit.
Right.
At first, it's going to be exclusively sold in Target, and so it's directly aimed at like getting people who are not familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, not familiar with the lore, the world, and all that into it. And if you started with the starter kit, you'll know that it's got like a condensed version of the rules, which I find super handy. I like keeping them with me more than say my player's handbook because they're just smaller and like the core rules of it. And then this starter adventure, but as well as some pre-gens, but it doesn't have say a step-by-step guide to creating a character or anything. It doesn't have, which the Essentials kit will have, sort of like here's a step-by-step guide. It seems like 5 or 6 years in, they're reimagining and taking a second look at how people play 5th edition, how people enter into the game, how they onboard themselves, and then designing a product that's meant to meet those needs. And so, like I said, part of that is going to be this, step-by-step character creation process. There's going to be physical props that are there. I've recently started playing with a lot of new players. In my home group that it's taken us a long time to get started and sort of revved up, there's 6 of us, and 4 of the people playing are brand new to 5th edition, if not role-playing games in general.
Yeah.
And so for one of them, just handing them some spell cards so that they didn't have to flip through the book when they were playing a bard made a world of difference. And they went from going like, I'm not feeling this, like how do I play this character? I'm already 3rd level and I don't know what's going on, to, oh, these are my spells, this is my character sheet, now I go. So like having physical props, I think longtime role players maybe discount the value that physical props have for both new players as well as veterans, right? Like I love cards and things. Give me a magic item card deck. Give me a monster card deck. Give me little handouts I can have. Give me things tactile things to engage other senses for the players. Those things are going to be partially in there. Not the only thing. But,
yeah, and also just having those spell cards pares down the info that you're having to look at. Because even just like flipping through the book and being inundated with spell after spell, you start getting that like choice paralysis, right? Or analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
And when you can just hand your player like, here, you can cast these spells. There it is. You're just like, oh, okay, cool. These are my cantrips. This is my 1st level.
Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah,
there you
it's
go.
easier to grasp.
Yeah. And so in terms of like the exact, like what's exactly included in the Essentials kit, I think it's more like magic items and everything. There might be spells, but it's the tactile nature.
Yeah.
It's the fact that you hand them, there's big maps. It's a supplement for all those things that are in the starter kit, plus an additional adventure. Sends you to the mountains that are nearby to Phandalin to, I think, defeat a white dragon of some kind or feature some sort of white dragon there. So it's an extension of that sort of adventure, getting people on board, and then it's also there also will contain rules for like one-on-one gaming, 1 DM, 1 player, and for a lot of groups, like that's it. They can't find 3 other people to act as players, or 3 other people can't like show up on a regular basis. So having those one-on-one rules is going to be really handy.
Yeah.
And something that I think should have, like, in a perfect world, is in the DMG.
Well,
But,
I mean, it makes sense, right? I mean, I know it's a game that is encouraging. You want 4 to 6 people.
Sure.
More if great if you want to run a West Marches.
Yeah.
But I mean, how many times have we run just like solos, like just one-on-one?
Yeah.
And I mean, I love playing with other people, but there is something about like when you have a mission that you need to do, like a side mission.
Yes.
Running a solo, there's nothing quite like it.
There's really not, and like it's whether it's side missions and just having something that's easy for you to use for those, or if it's like a full campaign, like there is something very, I use it in a very broad sense, but very intimate about it.
Yeah.
Right, because you have the possibility to make a connection between a character and the world in a very much more personal way. You know, there's the navigating of other people's ideas and decisions and what they think they should do when you're playing with a full group.
Yeah.
And at some point you are going to have to make compromises based on what you want to do, as whether you're a dungeon master or a player. And so like that one-on-one experience offers a more focused kind of thing. It's like I want to tell, or I want to play through this kind of game. I want the story at the end of it to be this. then that one-on-one experience is like a really cool way to do it. You get super invested in it.
Yeah.
You really tailor the campaign for it, and sometimes they can last for a long time, especially if you're willing to like use a lot of downtime and sort of hand wave things and the like. So I'm excited about that part of the Essentials kit, if only because I think new products that will get new people into the hobby are just great, and I like to see them. I like, as someone who came from an education background, I like seeing how the designers of the game create the tools that you use to teach others. You know, one of the things, and this would be another big tangent, surprise, that I often think a lot about is like, for me, becoming a dungeon master and learning how to do that, and the age at which I made that decision was one of those things where I was like, I knew it would be it'd be tough. There wasn't an example to follow. There wasn't a lot of like any resources, but it was just something like I knew I had to do, and that was very satisfying. And so I would just like stumble through it until I got it. Mm-hmm. And I think about that and how big of a hurdle that is for so many DMs.
Yeah.
That the fact that they would have to go through this process potentially without assistance, without an aid, without someone telling them, yes, it's okay, you're doing fine, it's all right. And I go like, it's one of the reasons why we do the channel that we do, right?
Well, I was going to say, most people aren't going to help start a whole channel just so they can learn how to be a DM, but that's what I had to do, you know. So here we are, you know.
Maybe a unique position yourself.
Yes.
But for a lot of people, like having a product like this that says like, okay, here's how you do this. Here's how you create this character. Here's how you build this world up. And hopefully there's a way to sort of like show DMs like, all right, here's how you add on. Like, you've got this starter kit set area. You've got your players are now level 6. Like, here's how you expand that out. Broaden your horizons. Create spaces for adventure with your game. And like, it's one of those things that makes me think like, all right, if our generation of gamers had to come up by like learning from playing with another group and all of the pitfalls that comes with, learning all the weird bad behaviors of like antagonistic oppositional GMing, or being passive aggressive as a player, or using, you know, in character justifications to solve out of character problems. All those kinds of things are a result of like these insular gaming tables that just develop bad practices that nobody fixes or addresses, and no one's like confident and emotionally with it enough to be like, hey, this isn't a lot of fun. I like you as a friend, but I would prefer that we did something different. Like, I see that fading away the more and more resources we have for dungeon masters and people to get into the game. The more resources there are online or podcasts or whatever it is to learn and to develop your skills. And like, part of why I feel so optimistic about the hobby after this weekend is like, this is great. Like, I'm glad to see these things come into existence. I hope they're awesome, and I hope that they represent a step in the direction of making the game easier to play, easier to run, and bringing more people in.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, that is the name of the game. I mean, you know, 5th edition is the most popular edition by every metric beyond. It's broken all the records.
I mean,
you know, I mean,
it's wild to think about, because up until then I was like, 3rd edition was, right? Like when we were playing 3rd edition, it was huge. Yeah. It was everywhere. And I'd always heard stories about it, what it was like in the 80s, when, you know, right around the time that D&D was like super huge there. You could buy all kinds of crazy D&D merch back then. And like, so there have been times when D&D has been popular. There have been times when role-playing games have been popular as a whole. But this feels different than the last time. This feels more inclusive. It feels more like the longevity of getting people to, you know, show up, to play, to be invested. It feels different in that regard.
Yeah.
And maybe it's the position we're in, and you know, if we're down in the trenches, it'd be different. But I like where we're headed here as a hobby. The Essentials kit wasn't the only thing that sort of showed that to me. I don't know what they're called. This is where I'm a terrible, terrible YouTube host. And there's a line of sort of like young adult fiction that's kind of coming out. That distills the concepts even further and presents them in a form for people who are maybe not ready to sit down and play a game, but are ready to experience the world and become familiar with the concepts.
Yeah.
For me, it was this weird mishmash of video games and board games and other things. And at the same time, you're like, well, here's this book, Weapons of Warriors and Monsters and Spells, like all these things about D&D that you can even use to like inform your own, imagination, your own play, and get you into that game. So
yeah,
I'm excited for all that.
Oh, totally. And I read some of the Rick and Morty versus D&D book that I bought. It's got the first 4 issues in it, and it's a great start.
It's a good one.
It's a very interesting introduction to D&D, and that's what I like about it.
Yeah.
Is the fact that the first few pages, probably the first issue, is just Morty watching these people talk about D&D and wanting to be part of it.
Yes, yeah. What is this weird thing everybody's talking about?
And then, of course, Rick's response to it, which is like, dude, it's about fucking time,
Right, yeah.
And then
Power gaming
and then
Rick.
you can imagine what a D&D session, I'll save that surprise for the readers, but a D&D session put together by Rick. What it eventually would sprawl into.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, I mean, this all kind of speaks to a larger sort of cultural moment with D&D and sort of nerd culture in general, in which it's like, I can remember time like sitting and say like the first X-Men movie, right? And you're just sort of like watching it for the first time on screen and being like, these are comic books in the movies.
Yeah.
And like the journey from there from there to where we are now with say Endgame and all the other Marvel and DC movies that are out, and not to mention the TV shows and everything. It's one of those that speaks to a moment of like the mainstreaming of nerdy activities. The fact that these used to be things that you would obsess over by yourself and sort of like only share with a trusted group of people who you were willing to just put up with a lot of stuff for to spend time with. And like the broadening and mainstreaming of it is one of those things that I think is going to come with drawbacks. It's going to come with changes, right?
Yeah.
Changes.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. And I think it's more like just accepting that it will, accepting that the changes don't mean you can't play the game you want to play. And like you might not see it reflected in the big stuff, but it's still there at your table.
Yeah, and those books still exist. If you like second edition,
hey, listen,
play second edition. They're still there.
They're still there. It's still a great game to play. Still a lot of fun things.
A lot of stuff on Drive Through RPG. You can still
Absolutely.
buy for it.
Certainly. So I think that this whole experience is just being like a D&D party, just to come out here to see it, to walk around yesterday in our Ilmater first cosplay, by the way, right? I think we skipped that in the beginning.
Well, we did kind of barely talk about it, but I think it's worth mentioning.
Oh yeah.
Like I've gotten into the cosplay on my gaming in my weekly streams and really getting into it, getting fake tattoos and fake teeth and all that for Koskoff and everything. But to actually like go out and the full dress, man, caked in dirt and blood, and just being a priest of Ilmater. If there's anything I love, it is staying in character all day.
You're so much better at it than I am.
I can't tell you how many times I've blessed people. Patrick Rothfuss, him, Jeremy Crawford. I blessed Chris Perkins. Ilmater's blessings be upon you, my son. May your suffering be removed and placed in my path instead. Just because I love that kind of shit.
Yeah.
But I mean, got to give a shout out to Hogfly Studios.
Definitely.
It's
Definitely.
WebDM's home right now. It's where we shoot our shows.
Yeah.
But we finally were like, hey, we want to do a thing
Yes.
that can really show off what y'all do.
What y'all do, yeah. And the fake blood was great. I had a lot of fun bloodying up my robe. I didn't realize.
Scaring our fans.
Scaring our fans, yes, everybody. If you've been following me on Twitter for the last few days, I have not been brutally murdering Pruitt or his clones, simulacra, or otherwise replicants of him.
Yeah.
It's fake blood that's super awesome and has still stained my nails. So there you go. The whole weekend, just kind of bring it back home. The whole weekend so far has been it's like been visiting the Feywild.
Yeah.
Right. It is a wondrous place. It is a fantasy world, but it's also a place that it takes all those elements that is part of the day-to-day being part of the hobby of that you only have online interactions of, and putting them all in one place. I met so many people. Right, and I'm terrible with names and faces. If I met you and I don't remember, that's my bad, not your fault at all.
Yeah.
But it's the meeting of people, whether it's like the second or third time after a couple conventions, or for the first time, and going like, hey, I recognize you. Are person who does that is that, oh, I love your thing, you know.
Yeah.
And being able to like come up to people and go, I'm both a participant content creator in this hobby. I do a thing. We've got the YouTube channel, we got the podcast, we got all the other good stuff. But I'm also a fan.
Yeah.
And I've been a fan way longer. And there are and I'm still a fan now. And there are people here who I'm starstruck by, and I'm like, holy crap, that's you.
Yeah.
And it's a real for me personally, it's a real awesome thing to have them go to them. Now you can tell my brain is slowly going to leak out of my ears in a minute.
Hey man, sitting in one place and just talking for almost 2 hours straight is,
it's a skill.
It's a skill. It's a burden.
Yeah.
But again,
there you go.
we bear it well.
We bear well. But it's those moments where someone goes like, holy crap, you're web DM.
Yeah.
And you have that moment where you go like, oh my God, this is an amazing sort of experience. And for me, it draws home how small the hobby really is.
Yeah.
How tight-knit it really is. How little things can have a huge impact. And I know I've said this time and again, but having the ability to like get perspective on our position as content creators, as people who are out there and making content for people and like trying to like demystify and de-stress this game that should be an enjoyable experience for you.
Yeah.
Being able to meet the people who you impact it's a beautiful thing, and I love it. I've had a blast. Can't wait to do it again.
Yep, same here.
What do you, any closing thoughts?
No,
yourself?
I mean, I'm just gonna parrot what you're saying here, really. I mean, and that's been a knock against us. Let me just repeat everything you just said. No, this is it's almost overwhelming, but when you get in a room with people who are just so pleased to just shake your hand, maybe get an autograph, and realize like how many people you've actually like touched and how many people you have made an easier time of. And like you said, this is a game.
Yeah.
It is a game. We should be having fun. We shouldn't be freaking out over like
too much.
two lines of text because there wasn't a comma.
Sure.
Let's save that for real life. You know what I mean? And so, it's been amazing. And I can't wait I hope we get to come back again next year. And I can't wait for all the different cons that we're going to be doing this year, hopefully. Even those can be, have to get in con shape.
Yep, they're an endurance match, certainly.
Get that worked up. But yeah, I mean, I think I've pretty much tapped all my word space out.
There we go.
So we thank you all for tuning in today, here from the D&D live event in beautiful LA. We hope you're having a great time out there, enjoying the festivities and the closing funness that's going on now. Jim's got a thing coming up here pretty soon.
There we go.
I'm going to be on a thing a little later at 4. But until then, we hope you're having fun, and may the dice ever roll in your favor.